Let's start off with a game. I'm going to put 8 clips on screen and you decide which ones are from a phone camera and which ones are from a real camera. The clips you'll be seeing were taken on phones and cameras ranging from 1998 all the way through this year. Okay, this is a good time to pause and think about your choices, all your life choices, before moving on to the answers to our game. Isn't it pretty crazy to sit back and just think about how far things have come? I know there's some obvious advantages, like the Sony FX3 that I'm filming with right now is clearly going to outperform the video quality of an iPhone 4. But there are a lot of times when a phone camera is actually better or at least more convenient or advantageous than a real camera. In this case, when I say real camera, I just mean a dedicated camera, not a phone camera. And if you saw my video on it, you know that I love my Canon XL1, which was a $4,000 broadcast quality camera from 1998, but an iPhone 14 seriously outperforms anything that this camera is capable of producing. I mean, honestly, even the iPhone 4 looks so much better than this $4,000 XL1. I really wish my Motorola Razr from 2006 still worked, because I would love to show you examples of these stunning 0.3 megapixel potato quality photos that I used to take with this that I was just absolutely like blown away by. Like taking photos with a phone? That was like living in Star Trek. Because it really wasn't that long ago that forgetting to take your camera with you, or God forbid, leaving with no battery or a dead battery or no memory card, meant that whatever you were doing, no chance to take photos, no chance to remember it, no MySpace photos. If you didn't take a specialized camera, a dedicated camera with you, you were just out of luck. Even the very first SD card that I ever bought was almost $100 for 512 megabytes. And I thought that was like the last memory card that I would ever need. And that wasn't that, it was a long time. It was like 20 years ago, but it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, because in my mind, 2003 was like 2 years ago. And will always be 2 years ago. 1990 is always 10 years ago. And then remember, if you grabbed your Motorola Razr and then you grabbed your camera, if you wanted to listen to music while you were taking photos or driving wherever you were going to take photos, then you also needed a dedicated music player, probably an iPod. So all of these things, in addition to your wallet or whatever else you needed, just had to be with you at all times. So while phones have been able to replace all these other gadgets in a big way and they've introduced new tools, for now, let's focus on the camera side of things. So it's no surprise that phone cameras have gotten pretty impressive, but one question I have is, when did we reach the point that phone cameras began to rival or even outperform dedicated cameras, at least some dedicated cameras? Dedicated myself to finding that answer. And like I said before, even though my Sony FX3 paired with a great lens is pretty much going to outperform any phone that there is, phones still look really great. And this side-by-side right here, my FX3 does look amazing. It's, at that point, I think a $5,000 camera setup, but my iPhone 14 Pro, which of course is not an inexpensive phone either, still holds up really well when compared to the FX3. And of course, the iPhone 14 Pro also has cinematic mode, which can sometimes be a bit cheesy, but it can sometimes also work really well. I've accidentally mixed up footage more than once in past projects, thinking that phone footage was from a real camera, and it was phony. But in many cases, when you're just trying to take like a quick photo, especially in a rushed situation or poor lighting, a phone is really better than a dedicated camera. The number of times I've had something nice like my A7 IV and there's a group of people and it's like, hey, get a group photo. Please just take the photo with your phone. I don't want to have to make everyone wait while I fiddle with settings to get things just right, and then I have to go home later and take out the memory card and then edit the photos and then send that, and I'm probably not going to do that for a few days for reasons and laziness and procrastination, versus just being able to snap a photo with my phone, instantly send it to everybody there, and everybody's happy. They don't necessarily care that it's the most cinematic looking bokeh-licious background blur in the world. In those cases, people just want to capture a moment. They just want to remember things. They just want to see the people they were with. It doesn't need to be the quality of a dedicated camera. Any modern phone is usually more than capable and oftentimes just easier to use and better than a dedicated camera in those situations. Now, going back to the Canon XL1, the reason I even started thinking about this thing with phone cameras at all was when I made the video about the XL1, I compared it to some phone cameras, just a whole bunch of hodgepodge of cameras, because I thought that it was interesting to see this professional level camera compared to something that everyone is just walking around with. And what really blew my mind was I knew the iPhone 14 was going to outperform the XL1. The iPhone XR looked pretty good. The iPhone 6 looked good. Even the iPhone 4 looked better. But where I thought things got really interesting was with the iPhone 3GS, which is the oldest smartphone that I have. This is from 2009. This camera specifically is from 2001. They shoot at the same 480p standard definition resolution, and in theory, they should look pretty similar, and the XL1 maybe even a little better because it has this beautiful lens on it. But I kind of find it easier to get better looking footage. The term better is very relative here, but better looking footage with the iPhone 3GS than the XL1. And in that case, going from 2001 to 2009, that was the time period where a small little thing like this could equal or outperform something like this just in terms of image quality, not in terms of user experience. This is not fun to film video with. This is very fun, even today, to film video with. Plus, it's a lot more reliable for long form recording. You can attach microphones, you can swap out lenses. Those are a lot of the advantages, of course, to a dedicated camera that phones just, they can't really compete with. But things have only gotten more intense since the iPhone 3GS in 2009. This was the very first iPhone that could film video. Not only have phones been able to start recording 4K and all these different frame rates and resolutions and even beyond 4K, but now it's not uncommon to have phones with multiple cameras, multiple sensors, multiple lenses, combined with really powerful software processing, so whatever you record with them then gets some magic done to it to look even better than what the lens and the sensor just captured on their own. So the goal here isn't even to talk about a specific phone or a specific phone camera, but just phone cameras in general. New ones come out all the time. There's always dedicated videos for like the latest and greatest phone and phone camera out there. I just want to look at this development over the years since smartphones became ubiquitous, cameras keep improving, and now most of us are walking around with cameras every day that rival what people had to pay thousands of dollars for not that long ago. So while this seems and is a random assortment of phones, I personally am not someone who gets a new phone every single year. It's usually like every 3-ish years or so I'll get a new phone. This is a pretty good representation of phone camera quality over the past 15-ish years. And while I'm using iPhones in these examples, I think it still applies to Android and other phones as well because, you know, for example, while there may have been an Android phone that had a better camera, and I think for sure there was, than the iPhone 6, the iPhone 6 is still a pretty good representation of where phone cameras were back in 2014. All right, so let's start with some basic comparisons to get a frame of reference of what these phone cameras are capable of. Now to do this, I'm going to need to make some very scientific rig to be able to compare cameras side by side. Fortunately, I've got a whole bunch of strange grip gear, which is incredibly helpful to have, so I found this little flat bracket that actually came with an old Canon GL2, and then I mounted a phone holder on one side that is kind of tall, and then a monitor mount that pans and tilts on the other side with a shorter phone holder on it. And now what I can do is have two phones side by side at relatively the same height, But of course, the cameras aren't going to be at the exact same height, but because this one is fixed, I can then turn this one and tilt it to try to match the framing as accurately as possible. Framing is very different, like the field of view is very different across all of these. Some of them are so tight and compact, while others, like, you know, the iPhone 14 is just so wide, it's almost like a GoPro. So now looking at the iPhone 3GS, this is actually one of the most interesting to me personally, because even though we expect all phones now to have multiple cameras capable of recording video, I think it's easy to forget that the first two iPhones could not record video. The original iPhone and the iPhone 3G could only take photos. They had no video recording option. The iPhone 3GS in 2009 was the first iPhone capable of recording video. And that video was standard definition with a resolution of 640 by 480 locked in at 30 frames per second. But hey, it was video on a phone. Video on a phone. The still photos it took were 3.15 megapixels at f2.8, and there was no front camera. I think that's something that we forget a lot too, is that phones didn't always have a front-facing camera. Around the time I started teaching in 2010 was when the iPhone 4 came out that had the front-facing camera, and that's when selfies really started becoming popular. And a lot of times my students were taking selfies, and I didn't realize that phones had front-facing cameras, and so I would see them holding up their phone like this, and I thought they were taking pictures, and the number of times that I like waved and posed for people taking selfies is more than I would like to admit. It's like when somebody waves to someone behind you, but you wave at them thinking they're waving at you. And now here's the iPhone 4. This is probably still one of, if not my favorite phones ever. It was also the first iPhone that had that front-facing camera. And that front-facing camera was only capable of 0.3 megapixels, just like the old Motorola Razr, but the rear camera was capable of 720 HD video at 30 FPS. This was the first time a phone could shoot high-definition video, not full high definition, but still 720p high definition right here in your phone. It could take still photos at 5 megapixels up to f2.8, and it also had a built-in flash. Again, those things that we just take for granted now. Now, I had the iPhone 4 for a number of years until the iPhone 6 in 2014. The iPhone 6 was the first time that the iPhone got bigger. They'd always been kind of the same size, and I think it's easy to forget how tiny these were, especially the screen doesn't take up the whole frame. The screen is so small. I kind of like it though. I kind of like this little like spy phone feeling, but it's a very tiny phone, and so getting a bigger phone and a bigger display felt really, really cool. This is still kind of, honestly, the iPhone 6 I think is like the perfect size for a phone. But the iPhone 6, even almost a decade later, I think still looks really good. The video is 1080. It doesn't go up to 4K, but it's full high definition 1080 at 30 or 60 frames per second. You've got some pretty awesome digital stabilization built in, and that front camera is now 1.2 megapixels at f2.2, and you can also do 720 high definition video in that front facing camera with autofocus. I think, again, that development of not only did phones not have front cameras, and then they did, and then the front cameras couldn't do video, and then they could, but they didn't have autofocus, and then they did. So now this phone had front-facing video with autofocus, front-facing high-definition video with autofocus. I don't know if you remember, but the iPhone 6 was also when the camera started bumping out and protruding, so that way they don't sit perfectly even on a surface anymore. And everybody was so mad about like how far the camera bump stuck out on the phone, and now we have just I mean, it's gotten a little bit absurd. Now, the iPhone 6 was another just super incredible, super capable phone that I really loved, and my next phone was the iPhone XR in 2018. Now, not only did the iPhone XR come in this amazing blue color, which every phone should be available in, it also had 4K video built right in at different frame rates, 24, 30, and 60 FPS. The front-facing camera got a huge bump to 7 megapixels at f2.2. We have portrait mode now, so you can get that very realistic blurry background that doesn't look digitally created at all. If you put a bunch of roses in the background of a photo and then took a photo or video of a subject where the roses are out of focus, that would literally be a bouquet of roses. And the iPhone XR's still photo capabilities are pretty impressive too, 12 megapixels at f1.8. Now the iPhone 14 Pro for me is like, I can't even believe this is a phone when I see the photos from this. It's got 3 cameras, not just one. They are all optically stabilized. One of them is 48 megapixels with an f1.78 aperture at 24 millimeters. You have 2 other cameras that are 12 megapixels each. One is ultra-wide 13mm f2.2, and one is a 3-time telephoto 77mm f2.8. The versatility, I'm just not a phone guy. As I'm making a video about phones, I'm just really not a phone guy. I get a phone, I like it, I use it until something goes wrong with it, and then I get a new phone. I'm excited to get my new phone, but then I just kind of stick with that for a while. The camera capabilities of new phones are so insane. I'm really surprised at the peace of mind that it's brought me, because whenever I go anywhere, if I think, should I grab my camera? Should I bring a GoPro? Unless I'm really sure that I need one, I know that my phone is going to be more than capable of at least capturing essentially whatever I need. Now we're talking about a phone that has 4K video at 24, 25, 30, 60, all kinds of frame rates. You can do slow motion at 1080 at 120 FPS or 240 FPS. The front camera's 12 megapixels with 4K, 24, 25, 30, 60. So now we have multiple resolutions, not just in the back, but also in the front camera. So I guess this has 4 cameras. And just look at how far we've come. I know, you can compare the iPhone XR to the iPhone 14 and go, wow, that footage looks pretty good. 2018 versus 2022, the footage still looks pretty good. But if we look at the iPhone 14 Pro compared with the iPhone 3GS, it's like we're on an entirely different planet at that point. It is absolutely absurd how good phone cameras have gotten and how far these things have come. But now I think that begs the question, how do they compare with real cameras? So here are some back-to-back and side-by-sides that I think would be pretty fun. Let's look at the Canon XL1, that broadcast quality camera from the late 90s, early 2000s, compared to the iPhone 3GS, the first iPhone that records video. Keeping in mind that these two record the same resolution video, the XL1 has a significantly higher quality lens than the iPhone 3GS does, and since I've made my XL1 video, I am now able to import the footage via FireWire. So this is the highest quality footage that I can get from the Canon XL1. Now, sticking with the iPhone 3GS, I want to compare it with this, which is a television camera from 2003. This is a standard definition camera, but it is a much higher quality camera than even the XL1 is. And this Sony DVCAM broadcast camera went for something around $20,000 at the time of its release. And the iPhone 3GS kind of holds up really well compared to it. This lens is unbelievable, and the versatility and the I/O and of course the reliability and the capabilities of cameras like this, no phone can even come close. But just basic image quality, I think the little tiny iPhone, the first one that ever shot video, is better than this big old camera. But now we're moving into a bit more of a modern era. This is the Red 1, the very first Red cinema camera versus the iPhone 4. So the Red 1 was released in 2007, 3 years before the iPhone 4, and it is a 4K capable camera. It is an absolute pain to work with. I have a whole video about it. It's kind of a nightmare. It takes over a minute to just turn the camera on. The quality of the footage that you get from the Red 1 is second to none. Even today, it still looks so good, and it's just such a special camera. But here it is compared to the iPhone 4, which again could top out at 720p. So now that we're using a real camera that is outperforming a phone, let's level up our phone. Let's go from the iPhone 4 to then the iPhone 6. So now we're doing 1080 footage against 4K footage. And this is what it looks like when you run the iPhone 6 up against the Red 1. I think the Red 1 is still kind of taking a lead here pretty significantly. So let's move then to a 4K phone. The iPhone XR, we've got 4K footage against 4K footage, a phone released in 2018 against a cinema camera released in 2007. Especially paired with a nice lens, the Red camera has some really special qualities, but the basic, if we're looking at color and clarity, phones are starting to catch up in a really big way. So now let's take the iPhone XR, this 4K phone, and compare it to this camera, the Sony FX3 that I'm filming on right now, which is my main real camera. I have to be honest that I am almost laughing when I do these comparisons and I see the footage from the FX3 because it just looks so good. Like, yeah, things have come a very long way. This isn't even, the FX3 came out in 2020. It's not even the newest or the latest and greatest anymore. And it is such a good camera, and the image quality is absolutely unreal. So it's pretty easy to see that the FX3, a $3,800 camera without a lens, just for the body, outperforms an iPhone XR. But let's then put the iPhone 14 Pro, the highest phone camera that I currently have, up against the FX3, my best quality real camera that I currently have. Again, in terms of image quality, I think the FX3 definitely takes the lead, but the iPhone is no slouch. And that cinema mode, while it can be cheesy sometimes, can kind of replicate some of the qualities of the FX3, at least a little bit. And the quality of the colors and the clarity of the image is fantastic on the phone. So like I said earlier, a phone is just so much easier to use. So even though the image quality isn't at the same level as the FX3, if I just need something quick and easy, this is just so much easier and it's just better than the regular camera for the convenience factor, even if I am sacrificing a little bit of image quality. Now, honestly, there really is no conclusion here. I'm not trying to tell you that real cameras are unnecessary or that phone cameras are better or worse. I just think it's interesting to look at this development and to kind of point out that it's probably something we've started to take for granted. Phone cameras have gotten pretty darn good, and it's just fun to see that development over time. The pile of technology that I'm holding in my hand right now represents so much in terms of capability and culture and just, I don't know, there's a lot of stories to be told in the years that these phones represent, I think, right? And is that too philosophical for this video about phone cameras? And I know that phones also cause a lot of problems. I was a high school teacher for 11 years, so trust me, I know the problems that phones can cause, also along with hot Cheetos and gum. Two of my least favorite things on planet Earth now. But phones are also 21st century Swiss Army knives. They can just do, well, actually, Swiss Army knives are still available in the 21st century, so they're technically 21st century Swiss Army knives. But phones it's like the digital version of a thing that can just do so many different things and be useful in so many different situations. But just like this Swiss Army knife can be used to build something or fix something, or injure somebody or break something, the phone can be used for good or bad. So it's all about how you choose to use the device and the tools that you have. Now, while a phone can do all of these things at once, I should note that there is oftentimes a lot of value in a dedicated one-task device. Sometimes it is better to be a master of one than a jack of all trades. The camera-related features of a dedicated camera outperform anything that a phone can do. And honestly, as much as I appreciate the development of phone cameras, the phone interface, just this black mirror of nothingness compared to tactile buttons of loveliness, I will prefer this every time in terms of user experience, but sometimes that's just not always super practical. I'm so glad that every time I leave the house, I don't need to take my phone and my music player, which for a long time was actually just a big CD player, and my camera, combined with, keys and wallet and other stuff as well. I definitely got use out of my early to mid 2000s cargo shorts because I had a lot of cargo to carry. But now when I need to go in the car, this is all I need. And I think that only needing this one magical device that does not only what these things did, but also a lot better in a lot of cases, is just a vastly, vastly superior experience. And speaking of things that are vastly superior, thank you to everyone who helps support my channel through Patreon and YouTube channel memberships. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you're willing to go so far above and beyond to help support independent creators like myself. It is so appreciated, and it genuinely means the world to me.